Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years, 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to discuss about um, etymology of environmentalism. A brief history of origin of modern environmentalism. Where did environmentalism came from? Modern environmentalism originated in the 60s to early 70s and meron siyang two important publication ng mga panahon na yan. Ito ang Silent Spring and the Limits to Growth. So, Silent Spring. Na-publish siya noong 1962 by Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson is a very influential female scientist noong mga panahon yun. And yung Silent Spring, wala siyang masyadong scientific findings, pero however, popular siyang science non-fiction book. So, observation of Rachel Carson with the use of pesticide, which is called DDT. So, yung DDT, isa siya sa inspiration ng book na yun. DDT is isa siyang pesticide. And DDT actually killing lots of bird, and without the songs of bird, the spring became silent. Ayun yung naging naging inspiration ng title ng book niya. Yung DDT, yung pesticide na yun. Kasi nga daw, yung DDT, pinapatay niya yung mga ibon. And syempre, yung mga ibon, bibigay sila ng ng ingay, ng sigla sa umaga, ganun. Kaya, pinapatay siya ng DDT. Kaya, and without birds, and without yung mga songs, wala yung mga ingay ng ibon, yung spring magiging silent. Spring became silent. Ganun. Rachel used the term called biocide to describe DDT. Biocide. Through bioaccumulation, many of organisms in the food web and the food chain were killed. So, it became a biocide. So, ayun nga daw, yung DDT, syempre yung DDT, pesticide siya and marami siyang nakikill na organisms. And marami siyang nakikill na organisms sa food web, sa food chain. Kaya ayun, describe din siya as biocide. Another influence of this book is the status of the female in science, which is extremely good. Environmentalism and human rights go hand in hand. Feminism is one of the social movement back in 1960s. So, ayun nga, kaya papansin nyo si Rachel Carson, isa siyang influential female scientist. Kaya yung feminism is one of the social movement back in 1960s. In 1970s, there's another important publication called The Limits to Growth. Na-publish siya noong 1972. So, yun. There are 5 main sections yung Limits to Growth. 1. Population. 2. Food production, industrialization, pollution, consumption of non-renewable natural resources. So, ayan. Those are the central theme of the Limits to Growth because in early 1970s, there were signs of environmental collapse. And in order to sustain growth, they have to limit the use of their natural resources or their resources. So, ayun. Ayun nga daw, syempre yung part ng, ng environmental nila, ng environmentalism. Kaya daw, yun yung 5 main section. Naging, siya, in sustain to there were signs of environmental collapse. In the mid-70s, there is a trend called alarmism. In the morning, you may be wakened by an alarm, which means that there is some warning before things actually happen. For example, energy crisis. Ayun nga daw, yung so-called alarmism syempre, from the root word alarm, syempre sa umaga gising ka ng alarm. Which means parang sa term nila, parang bibigyan ka ng, ng warning before things actually happen. Yun nga daw, for example, energy crisis. Ayun nga daw. So, possible danger of energy crisis. CFC, dam failure in the environment. O yung tuloy ang pagkasira. The scientists realized the possible danger of unlimited exploitation of natural resources. They started to think about conserving their natural resources and protecting the environment. So, ayun nga daw. Parang yung mga possible danger of yung energy crisis, CFC, dam failure, sa environment nila, parang nagsilbing alarm siya or warning para mag-conserve sila ng mga natural resources nila at protektahan yung environment nila. And then sa mid-70s, meron din silang mga sa major achievements. United Nations Ramsar Convention on the Wetlands. Ramsar is actually placed in Iran. And Minamata disease in Japan, Endangered Species Act in the US. So ayun, in late 70s, there is response to specific issues. Yan. Meron siya, actually madami siya specific issue, pero isa lang itong nailagay ko. Response to specific issues. 3 Mile Island Nuclear Reactor Meltdown. Kasi yung 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor meltdown, nung yung specific issue na yun, yung issue na yun, response nila doon, nung yun nga, nagkaroon na ng meltdown doon sa nuclear reactor, nagkaroon siya ng, nag-lead siya sa some nuclear campaigns and protests. And as a result, they began to review the policy of power generation after seeing the possible disaster of meltdown of nuclear reactor. So, ayun, yung parang yung nag-response nila dun sa, sa issue na yun. They start to review the policy of power generation. Kasi nga, parang possible siyang masira ng tuluyan. In early 80s, there is international cooperation of non-complex issues. For example, is Montreal Protocol in 1987, or phasing out of CFCs. Montreal Protocol is an international treaty designed to protect the ozone layer by phasing out the production of numerous substances that are responsible for ozone depletion. So, ayun nga, yung example nun is phasing out of CFCs kasi nga, nakaka-apekto siya sa ozone layer. And yung Montreal Protocol, siya, international treaty para protektahan yun, yung ozone layer. So long-term concern for large-scale issues, example is tropical rainforest. So, tropical rainforest, very special issue siya kasi most of the rainforest is distributed in a less developed country. And yung mga rainforest na yun, tawag dito, but those who want to save it, yung mas gustong magligtas dito or may pake dito is coming from more developed country or some of the scientists. So, ayan, syempre, hindi naman siya kaya ng isang party lang, one party lang yung mag-save or doon. Kailangan tulong-tulong. Sa refined directions, sustainable development, which is term we still hear today. Ayan, syempre nung 1980s, 1980s pa modern na siya. So, yung term na sustainable development, sabihin sustainable, sinusustain up until today. Ayan. Kaya yung term na yun, may hear natin siya hanggang ngayon. There are more coordination between scientists and other sectors. Ayan. Have you heard about these benefit concerts? Live Earth Concert and Rock for the Rainforest. Live Earth Concert is charity concert which aim to raise funds to combat climate change. Yun nga daw, yung concert siya, syempre hindi ko siya masyadong familiar. Pero yung concert na yon is nag-i-aim siya na maka-raise ng fund para pantulong to combat climate change. And yung Rock for the Forest, a lot of international artists raised funds to conserve rainforest in different countries, which may buy piece of land in those countries and set aside as reserve in order to preserve the natural resources. There are maybe some indigenous tribe living in those forests, so it's evidence that environmentalism and social progression can go hand in hand. So, ayun nga daw, yung Rock for the Rainforest, international, yung mga nagsama-sama mga international artists para daw mag-raise sila ng funds. And parang mag-raise sila ng funds, tapos bibili sila ng piece of land sa bawat country na mapipili nila, and this is set aside nila yon para daw ma-preserve yung natural resources. And syempre, meron daw, syempre, sa ibang land na yon, di mo maiiwasan may mga indigenous people doon, may mga tao nakatira doon. So, yun yung proof nila, or yun yung yung evidence nila na yung environmentalism and social progression pwedeng magsama, pwedeng maging magkatulong. Kasi syempre, yung environmentalism, yung natural resources natin, tapos yung mga tao nag-aalaga dito or namamahala dito, pwede silang magsama.
Hello everyone, I am CM Gatmaitan. I'm a regular student studying Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. I'm glad to be here with you at this very moment. I would also like to take this opportunity to apologize for the future external sounds you may hear later, such as vehicles passing by, cats quarreling, and everything. So during my talk, I'll provide you with some background on environmentalism and tell you the reason why it is important to you and to all of us. I will also present my findings on environmentalism in African and American continent later on the video. Now, without further ado, let's get started. First and foremost, let me give you the definition of environmentalism. So, environmentalism can also be known as environmental rights. It is a vast philosophy, ideology, and social campaign regarding concerns or affairs about environmental protection and health conservation and improvement, particularly as the Health for this Health seeks to integrate the impact of changes in the environment to humans, animals, plants, and non-living matter. While environmentalism focuses more on the environmental and nature-related facets or aspects of green ideology and politics, ecology combines the ideology of social ecology and environmentalism. Okay, so before I proceed, let me tell you the meaning of those things, the meaning of the green ideology and politics. So green ideology and politics is also called ecopolitics and is a political ideology that aims to strengthen and promote an ecologically sustained society rooted in environmentalism, non-violence, social justice, and grassroots democracy. So what are those words? Non-violence, grassroots democracy. What are those words? So let's start off with non-violence. So non-violence is the personal practice of being harmless to oneself and the others under every or any condition. It may come from the belief that hurting people, animals, and or the environment is unnecessary to achieve an outcome. And it may refer to a general philosophy of abstention from violence. To put it simple, non-violence is you shying away or moving away from violence or fighting. Next term is grassroots democracy. So what is it? So grassroots democracy is a tendency towards designing political processes that shift or transfer as much decision-making authority as practical to the organization's lowest geographic or social level of organization. To cite a specific hypothetical example, sorry for that noise, a national grassroots organization would place as much decision-making power as possible in the hands of the local chapters or common members instead of the head office. Simple as that. You give power to common members, not to the boss. Alright? Now that I have given you the definition for environmentalism, let us proceed to an example of environmentalism ideology. So one example would be the environmentalism promotes the preservation, restoration, and development of the natural environment and the vital elements or processes such as the climate, and may be referred to as a campaign or movement to control pollution or protect plant and animal diversity. For this pretext or reason, concepts such as land ethics, environmental ethics, biodiversity, ecology, and biophilia hypotheses appear predominantly. So what are these terms again? Land ethics, environmental ethics, biodiversity, biophilia hypothesis, ecology, what are those terms? So let me define it to you one by one. So let's start off with land ethics. So land ethic is a philosophy or theoretical framework about how ethically humans should regard the land, because it's land ethic, right? Next is environmental ethics. In environmental philosophy, environmental ethics is an established field of practical philosophy which reconstructs the essential types of argumentation which can be made for protecting natural entities and sustainable use of natural resources. Next is biophilia hypothesis, unfamiliar word, also called BET or BAT. It suggests that humans possess an innate tendency to see connections with nature and other forms of life. And it was true because we people really it is innate for us to see connections with other things. When we are thirsty, we seek water. When we are hungry, we seek for food. So those things are connections with us connecting with nature. So to give you a trivia, biophilia means the love for the living things. So that's what it means. Next term would be ecology. So ecology, the branch of biology that deals with the relations and or interactions of organisms and their biophysical environment, which includes both biotic and abiotic components. Okay, so when we say biotic, it is relating or resulting from living things, especially in their ecological relations. Biotic may refer to life, the condition of living organisms. Maybe examples of biotic things are abiotic factors are bacteria, an insect, and a tree. Those are biotic factors that shapes the ecosystem, right? And when we say abiotic, those are non-living things. But they affect the living. What are those things? It can be wind, it can be rain, it can be radiation, it can be pollution. It does not live, but it affects the living things. Okay. So, now that I have already given you the definition of environmentalism and its examples, we should now delve into the etymology and the broader topics of environmentalism ideology in the different continents of our world. Hello, it's me again. Now, as I've said earlier, I'm going to talk about the environmentalism ideology in Africa and America. First, I'm going to tell you about the environmentalism ideology in Africa, particularly or mainly in the South African country. Then finally, I will tell you about the environmentalism ideology in America. By the end of the video, I will tell you the conclusion I have come up about the environmental movement. Now, let's start. First, I will tell you about the early history of Africa's environmental movement and eco-politics. So, South Africa is a country that has undergone dramatic political changes in the recent years, transforming itself from a racial autocracy to a democratic society in which discrimination on racial and other grounds is forbidden, and the principle of equality is enshrined in the Constitution. These political changes have been reflected in the environmental sector, which similarly has transformed its wildlife-centered, preservationist approach, mainly appealing to the rich white minority, to a holistic conservation ideology which incorporates social, economic, and political as well as ecological aspects. Nevertheless, despite the fact that South African environmental movement has moved dramatically away from its former elitist image and made enormous strides in reaching a far broader spectrum of society, the transformation process of the environmental sector has not been entirely smooth or without serious setbacks. This is hardly surprising, given the fact that South Africa's long and bitter history of racism and racial conflict dating back to earliest days of white settlement in the mid-17th century has resonated down to the present, often negatively influencing the attitudes of historically marginalized communities toward environmental issues. The cumulative effect of racially discriminatory laws and the punitive conservation regulations has been the gradual but relentless alienation of blacks from the environmental sphere, and the growth of hostility to conservation issues is defined by the mainstream. These problems represents a legacy from the past that still presents obstacles today, as evidenced by several recent environmental conflicts. One particular controversy, which vividly illustrates the people versus nature dilemma that often faces a South African environmentalist, involves the right of a poor rural community to stay in the state-owned Duku Duku forest in St. Lucia Nature Reserve in KwaZulu-Natal. The forest, which contains the country's largest remaining patch of coastal lowland forest, has been under threat for years by invaders who have destroyed large tracts of land for housing and agriculture. A small number of forest dwellers have ancestral rights, but the majority of people have settled there only in recent years. Fueling the land invasion is a shortage of land for poor black farmers, widespread poverty and unemployment. While the government is attempting to provide a negotiated solution through the purchase of two adjoining farms for the purpose of resettlement, as well as involving the resettled inhabitants in ecotourist projects in the forest, the problem and the land invasion continue to grow. The land invasion continue to grow, with the violence erupting in the forest to the extent that the police and the military had to be sent to restore order. The problem has escalated to a point where a peaceful and constructive solution appears unlikely in the short term. Now, that's the early history for South Africa. Now we're gonna move on to the early history of American environmentalism. So here we go. So people's relationship to environment has to be understood in context of historical and contemporary class, race, and gender by a unique set of social, political, and economic factors arising from the period of conquest and subsequent industrialization. It can be argued that American environmental activism evolved over the last 175 years and is characterized by four distinct periods of mobilization. The pre-movement era from 1820s to 1913, the post-Hetchy era 1914 to 1959, the post-Carson era 1820s to 1913, the post-Love Canal or the 3 Mile Island era 1980 to the present. So the rudimentary elements or the precursors or the basic elements of the environmental movement emerged in the first half of the 1800s, a period marked by intense resource extraction, exploitation, environmental degradation, and rapid industrial development. The resource extraction and industrialization was accomplished through the process of appropriating land and labor, forcing people onto reservations, slavery, and indented servitude. The use of the legal system to control immigration, population flows, human rights, and access to land, meet labor demands, or to respond to racist nativist sentiments is also significant. So in the United States, race, class, and gender have had profound impacts on people's environmental experiences, which in turn has had significant impacts on political development, ideology, and activism. Occupational experiences and immigration policies also have been instrumental in shaping environmental encounters and experiences. Now, to my conclusion, as per my conclusion, the environmental movement is a powerful social movement. However, it faces many challenges. Among the most urgent is the need to develop a more inclusive, culturally sensitive, broad-based environmental agenda that will appeal to many people and unite many sectors of the movement. To do this, the movement must reevaluate its relation with industry and the government, reappraise its role and mission, and develop strategies to understand and improve race, class, and gender relations. So that's all. I hope you have learned something about the environmentalism ideologies in Africa and America. Thank you very much.
Now we are going to discuss about the environmentalism ideology in Asia. Asia is the biggest continent in the world. It has a lot of countries including the Philippines, India, Japan, South Korea, Saudi, Singapore, Malaysia, and so on and so forth. The number of issues of concern, including the environmental movement, is equally large, including, among others, indigenous people rights, community, forestry, conservation, wildlife protection, river and watershed conservation. So, madaming NGOs ang gustong tumulong para i-preserve yung meron ngayon sa Asia. Madaming mga agency ang tinayo para talagang protektahan kung ano yung gustong gawin nila para mapalago yung environment na meron tayo sa Asia. So now we are going to the evolution of environmentalism in Asia. Voluntary action, the cornerstone of civil society organization, has a long-standing tradition in the most countries in the Asia-Pacific region, reaching back to the pre-colonial communal societies. Environmentalism, as such, is by the most account a recent appearance in the Asia-Pacific region. This not to say the society in the region have not traditionally cared for the natural resources their livelihood depends on, but that organization exclusively concerned with conservation issues are relatively newcomers. So, ibig sabihin, halimbawa dito sa Pilipinas, dati tayo, uso pa yung bayanihan, yung lipat-lipat lang ng bahay, we don't use such as yung karpintero, nagagamit ng mga machines, so parang inaano nila na parang dahil palago na ng palago yung society na meron tayo, ganun din natin napapabayaan yung environment na meron tayo. Sinasabi din dito na halos lahat ng tao na naninirahan sa isang lugar, lalong-lalo na sa parte ng India, Thailand, mas gusto nilang preserve yung environment na meron sila. Makikita naman natin, halimbawa sa Thailand, kahit saan may makikita kang elepante, kahit nasa building ka, sa marami kang building, may makikita kang elepante na naglalakad, nagdo-drawing, ganyan. Unlike sa Pilipinas, sa South Korea, na wherein napaka-civilized na. So, kumbaga, yung mga NGOs na tinayo, ini-aim nila na ma-preserve yung history na meron ang Asia, na unlike that, na dati, onting barter of goods, barter of products, okay na. Unlike ngayon na halos lahat ay meron na tayong technology. So, next is, in a review of environmental movement in India, sinabi ni Gadgil and Guwa that there exists marked difference between what they refer to as first world environmentalism and the third world environmentalism. So, from the world itself, first world, ibig sabihin, ito yung mga country na medyo angat na. Yun yung kagaya ng South Korea, Japan, China, and the third world country is the Philippines itself. So, there is a numerous attempts at establishing typological of civil societies have been undertaken. They bar according to definition of civil society, the specific field within which they originate. So, sinasabi dito na makikita natin na pinagkaiba ng isang environment sa tinatawag na first world country and third world country. Halimbawa, sa Pilipinas na third world country, makikita agad natin ano yung difference sa first world country. Halimbawa, South Korea to Philippines. Makikita natin na pinagkaiba. Doon yung South Korea ay madaming mayaman na bansa, makikita natin na pinapreserve nila yung mga mountains kahit na nasa cities na sila. Yung mga mountains pa din sila, katabi lang ng isang building. Unlike sa Pilipinas, puro tayo building, puro tayo establishment, pero hindi natin na-preserve yung environment na meron na Pilipinas. And it also says that there's similarly problems of land and resources, depletion and pollution, and the decimation of biological diversity with low prospect of a major transformation in consumption pattern to mitigate the problem caused by deforestation, soil erosion, and the other types of resource degradation. About dito sa Pilipinas, ang sabi doon is yung alam nating word na climate change. Halimbawa dito sa Pilipinas, dati napakayaman ng resources natin. Dami tayong minerals. Ngayon, sa sobrang pagmamine natin, hindi natin na papansin na unti-unti na nagbabago yung environment na meron ng Pilipinas. Kasi, na sisira na natin siya without our proper knowledge kung ano talagang dapat na gawin. Kasi, as a third world country, gusto natin umangat. Next is diversity and structure. Numerous attempts at establishing typology of civil society has been undertaken. Yun nga yung sinabi ko kanina. Madaming NGOs and mga organization ang nag-attempt na tulungan na bumalik sa dati yung environment na meron tayo. Na pangaralan yung mga government agencies na pagdating sa establishment, kung ano yung proper na gawin pagdating sa pag-uunlad ng isang bansa para hindi maapektuhan yung environment na meron tayo. So, ito yung mga activities na ginawa para ma-preserve ang environment na meron sa Asia. The activities of constituent of environmental movement vary with their sizes and geographical scope, among other factors. Generally large, Asia-Pacific developing countries ECSO approach environmental issues from the perspective of poverty reduction and therefore placed human concern at the center of their strategy. So, sinasabi dito na dahil sa gusto nating i-provide yung mga pangangailangan ng tao, gusto natin unahin basic necessities, basic needs, basic wants ng mga tao, nakakalimutan natin yung mga kinukuha nating resources ay kinukuha natin sa environment. So, yung agency ng ECSO ay gustong kung ano yung pinagkaiba pagdating sa needs of human and needs of environment. ECSO from industrious countries, on the other hand, tend to place the conservation of nature and natural resources at the top of their agendas, with human concern often added as the afterthought. Yun nga, dahil lang concern natin ng humans, naapektuhan yung decision ng isang organization, ng isang NGOs, na i-preserve o pagandahin ng isang environment. Yung paniniwala nila na kailangan pagandahin yung environment ng isang bansang to, kailangan naapektuhan nito ang pagdidesisyon dahil sa needs ng tao. So, there's a lot of project that the NGOs and the government agency that wants to do in order for us to conserve our environment. One of those things is information dissemination on environmental issues among the various public, communities, government, and business. Field project on community forestry with components, fruit tree, alternative agricultural practices, sanitation and health facilities and services, housing with sanitation and potable water component, potable water resources and facilities, educational training of technical and field staff and community leaders on environmental protection. Most of these activities are undertaken by international ECSOs, either as component of larger project or as standalone. In order to better involve local stakeholders, many international ECSO, particularly the large conservations NGO, establish working partnership with local counterpart organization. So, yun yung mga projects in order for us para mapaganda yung environment na meron tayo sa Asia. So, now we are going to discuss about the environmentalism ideology in Europe. So, alam naman natin na lahat ng pag sinabing Europe, andyan ng Italy, Paris, France, Germany, talagang pag sinabi natin na Europe, yun yung green environment na kailangan na sinasabi natin na talagang gusto natin. So, the EU has some of the world's highest environmental standards developed over decades. Environment policy helps the EU economy become more environmentally friendly, and it also protects Europe's natural resources and safeguarding the health and well-being of people living in the EU. So, in order para magkaroon ng magandang environment ang EU, meron silang mga way para magkaroon sila ng maganda at proper environment. Una dito, environmental quality. So, alam naman natin lahat na gustong-gusto natin na magandang quality ng environment. Sa EU, it is central to their health, their economy, and their well-being. However, it faces several serious challenges, not least those of climate change, unsustainable consumptions and production, as well as various forms of pollution. So, kahit gusto natin ng magandang quality ng environment, hindi natin alam na ang use ng yung ginagamit ng mga tao ay yung pollution, air pollution, water pollution, yung mga businesses na mga factory na nagpo-produce ng madaming product na nakaka-affect sa environment natin na nagko-cause ng climate change. So, next is EU environmental policies and legislation. So, pagdating dito, napakahigpit ng EU kasi para magkaroon sila ng magandang environment, meron sila din magandang policies and legislations. Those policies and legislations protect natural habitats, keep air and water clean, ensure proper waste disposal, improve knowledge about toxic chemical, and help businesses move toward a sustainable economy. So, ang policies and legislation nila ay pumupokus sa mga businesses na nagpo-produce ng mga product na makakapekto sa environment nila. Nagkakaroon din sila ng mga seminar in terms of proper waste disposal and waste segregation of goods, and also about the toxic chemical na makakapekto at malaking impact na makakabago sa quality na meron ang EU, environment sa EU. Next is agreement and implementing the EU's emission trading system. So, pag sinabi dito, EU countries have agreed to meet various targets in the years to come. The EU seeks to ensure that climate concerns are taken on board in the other policies area and also promote low-carbon technologies and adoptions measures. So, para magkaroon sila ng magandang environment, nagpo-produce sila ng mga machines na makakatulong para magkaroon sila ng magandang quality. Pero, dahil nga malaking epekto ang paggawa ng machines na nakakapekto sa pagsira ng environment nila, gumagamit sila ng proper materials para proper materials to have a proper environment, at makakatulong yung materials na yon sa paggawa ng mga machines na hindi ganun makakaapekto sa environment ng EU. Next is EU environment policy. Meron silang batas. It is based on Article 11 and 191, 190 of the Treaty on the Function of the European Union. Under Article 191, combating climate change in a explicit objective of EU environmental policy. Sustainable development is an overarching objective of the EU, which is committed to high level of protection and improvement of the quality of the environment. So, napakalaki nung policy na meron sila na talagang maano yung mga tao. Makikita natin kung paano sila kadisiplinado in terms of policies na yon. Talagang ini-implement nila, unlike sa other country, halimbawa sa Pilipinas. Sabi natin na bawal magtapon dito. Pero unlike sa EU, pag sinabi na bawal magtapon dito, bawal magtapon dito. Next is what is the aim of their communication? Yung aim ng mga way at steps na yun para magkaroon ng magandang environment ang EU. It describes how the European Union has taken the lead in the present for ambitious target in a legally binding United Nations framework of Convention on Climate Change Agreement. So, nakipagtulungan yung EU sa UN na magkaroon ng magandang climate change agreement. Magkaroon ng magandang agreement kung paano maano yung climate change na naranasan ng environment sa EU at lalo na sa buong mundo. Next is, it set out the EU's objective for the Paris Climate Conference and how this could be achieved. So, based sa nabasa ko, yung Paris ay unti-unti na nagbabago yung environment dahil sa dami ng turista na added. So, madami yung population. So, ibig sabihin lang na maaari masira yung environment na meron sila. So, yung EU ay ini-aim nila na mabalik sa dati yung environment at population na meron sa Paris. So, next is EU Climate Action and European Green Deal. The EU is fighting climate change through ambitious policies at home and close cooperation with international partners. Climate change actions, the heart of European Green Deal, an ambitious package of measures ranging from ambitiously cutting greenhouse gases emission to investing in cutting-edge research and innovation to preserving Europe's natural environment. So, hindi lang sila basta plan, gumagawa din sila ng mga researchers kung paano magkakaroon ng magandang environment at paano ma-preserve environment nila. So, sa EU, nag-i-invest sila ng malaki na pondo, nakikipagtulungan sila sa international agencies, international agents, nakipagtulungan sila sa mga international agencies para matulungan sila kung paano maging proper yung research na gagawin nila at magkaroon sila ng proper environment and proper environment quality. So, yung sa nagawa nila na Green Deal European Green Deal, ito yung under niya. European Climate Law to enshrine the 2050 climate neutrality objective into UE law, European Climate Pact to engage citizens and all parts of society in climate action, 2030 Climate Target Plan to further reduce net greenhouse gas emission by at least 55% by 2030. Next is by June 2021, the Commission will also review and where necessary propose to revise all relevant policy and instrument to deliver additional greenhouse by emission reduction. So, in early 2021, the Commission will adopt a new, more ambitious EU strategy on adaptation to climate change. In order to strengthen effort on climate proofing, resilience building, prevention, and regardless ensuring that businesses, cities, and citizens are able to integrate climate change into the risk management practices. So, yun yung mga ways and yung mga plans nila na naka-organize by year kung paano nila matatapos yung Green Deal project nila. So, sinasabi din dito na kung paano mag-a-adjust yung mga tao pagdating sa climate change, kung paano paano yung EU mag-a-adjust sa climate change at paano yung climate change mag-a-adjust sa EU.